It's clear that the restructuring is not working yet, and the new $3,195 rower may not solve the company's problems. I know it won't solve your problems, but I do have a solution for you. So Peloton, if you're listening, I have a solution for you, but it's going to cost you. All right. So looks like Peloton is in the news again. Happened to be very familiar, worked with a bunch of the trainers, they're active trainers that are there. They are back in the news again. Do we want to watch this? Let's see what Peloton has to say.
It's been an absolutely brutal 2022 for Peloton. Now the company is laying off more workers and jacking up prices on some of their bikes and treadmills. And even as people return to gyms, SoulCycle is shuttering 25% of its locations and laying off workers. So the question is, has the boutique fitness boom finally gone bust? Here to discuss all of this is CNN's Allison Murrow. So Allison, what do you think is going wrong with the boutique fitness industry right now?
Yeah, it's been a really brutal couple of years for boutique fitness, but I think it's been a brutal year for all small businesses, and all gyms were basically forced to shut down in 2020. But the bigger chains like Planet Fitness and Equinox, those kinds of companies were able to weather the storm a little bit easier than boutique firms like Peloton and SoulCycle that were smaller operations. But Peloton had a real edge going into the pandemic. It was already doing home fitness before home fitness became kind of the only thing that was on the table for anyone who wanted to get a workout in. So it was a real big year for Peloton, and now it's hitting the wall, partly because it just overextended itself. It spent hundreds of millions of dollars at the peak of its power when everyone was trying to get their hands on a bike. But because of supply chain issues and a whole host of other things, the bikes were delayed. So now Peloton finds itself after a series of missteps kind of going, whoops, we've overextended ourselves and we have to claw back. That's why it's raising prices. And SoulCycle was hit with a very different problem. It was already kind of waning in popularity before the pandemic, and then in-studio classes became impossible. So it had to kind of try to adapt to this new world. And we're finding that it's not going out of business. It's just, as in its words, right sizing in certain markets because it overbuilt.
Whoops. So for those of you that do not know, I was a founding instructor for Barry's Bootcamp for a while, and Rumble, which is both boutique fitness and opening boutique studios, is somewhat of a specialty of mine. One of the things about Peloton that was interesting this entire time was the idea that it had very few studios. It only had one studio. It had satellites where they would sell their bikes from. So they did have these like satellite showrooms, but their actual studio, they only had one studio, and they only had a handful of trainers, which via the internet, streaming classes, so on and so forth, it's much easier to scale that way. So you get a lot done with very little. And I was really trying to push some of my people at Rumble to follow suit, and at Barry's to follow suit, to do things that are a little bit closer to what Peloton was doing. Peloton did get out over their skis. What they didn't say, or what they meant to mention with them kind of overextending themselves, is that they designed a treadmill. For whatever reason, I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to try to do that. And here's the reason why. Anytime you have equipment, you have liability. There's a possibility or an opportunity for someone to get hurt. Whether it's a at-home class and they're you're trying to show someone what to do, or whether they buy a piece of equipment. So whenever you have a piece of in-home equipment, that equipment needs to be as safe as possible. Spin bikes aren't, super duper dangerous. I would imagine if you're not really paying attention and your foot comes off the pedal and that thing's moving, it could hit you in the shin. I'm sure a handful of you guys probably have experienced that before. Treadmills, the reason why that treadmill was, the treadmill that they designed was a problem was because it had an open front and an open back. In another video, I'll break that down, but basically the belt moves, but there's no protection in the front or in the rear of the treadmill. The belt is exposed. And what happened was, I believe a child kind of got caught up under the treadmill and got hurt. I'm not sure if that child passed or not. I'll double check, but it was a poor design, and that coupled with the pandemic, coupled with some bad press. I believe a gentleman that was famous, a famous actor, had a heart attack on one. Whether or not it had anything to do with the class, who knows? But either way, it was really bad press. So they got out over their skis. They spent a lot of money on research and development on this treadmill, and then they scrapped the whole treadmill thing. And that's the hundreds of millions of dollars that they ended up spending. So I knew that was going to be a problem. And the reality is that, the people that like boutique fitness. So they like being next to each other, and they're willing to deal with the risk of getting sick if they can go into some of these classes and be around their friends. Because for a lot of people, what they don't realize is that in a lot of cases, this is more of a social deal than it is a fitness deal. As far as some of these boutique classes, in a lot of ways, people will look to these classes as therapy, and they take it very serious. So if they find an instructor they like and a place they like, and it's convenient for their class, or convenient for their schedule, people will pay upwards of, and at least for me at Rumble, our classes were $32 to $36 a pop. And these are 60-person classes. So if you're kind of middle America and small town, that sounds crazy to you, but that's the going rate in LA, San Francisco, New York, Miami, Dallas type thing. So looks like they are developing a rower, which again, I think is a terrible idea. If I'm not mistaken, they're already trying to teach classes, so on and so forth. Rowers are much safer equipment, usually pretty easy to maintain. So I kind of see what they're doing. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but it looks as though they're already looking to sell at this point. So for those large companies that are capable of writing a check like that, it says possible suitors here in this article. And I will, let's go ahead and just go over this really quick. Peloton formally unveiled its high-priced new rowing machine Tuesday, but the company is still facing rough currents as it struggles to find its way into more friendly stock market waters. I think that's a terrible idea. I think them introducing a rower is a terrible idea, but whatever. Shares of Peloton are down a staggering 70% this year. Co-founders Joe Foley and Hisao Kushi announced last week that they were leaving the company. The news comes just 7 months after Foley stepped down as CEO, and Peloton brought in former Spotify and Netflix chief financial officer Barry McCarthy to lead the company. Peloton also announced job cuts at the time of McCarthy's hiring and revealed more layoffs in August. It's clear that the restructuring is not working yet, and the new $3,195 rower may not solve the company's problems. I know it won't solve your problems, but I do have a solution for you. So Peloton, if you're listening, I have a solution for you, but it's going to cost you. Peloton is one of the several pandemic era winners that is now finding it difficult to keep both the boom times going. Zoom is in a similar situation. People are no longer stuck at home. So maybe it's time for Peloton to sell out to a larger company in the sports athletics sector. Peloton was not immediately available for comment about the possible takeover, possible suitors. But a marriage between Peloton and a sports apparel company or tech firm could make sense, especially since Lululemon has already entered the home fitness market with its $500 $500 million acquisition of Mirror in 2020. With that in mind, Nike or Adidas could work out as potential Peloton buyers. Both companies recently launched Peloton branded apparel collections as well. Apple and Google owners Alphabet are already big players in the fitness tech market thanks to Apple Watch and Google-owned Fitbit. Both companies are sitting on mountains of cash and could easily absorb Peloton. The company's market value is now just $3.4 billion, down from a peak of nearly $50 billion in early 2021. Amazon is also compelling as a potential Peloton owner. The retail giant just announced last month that it was planning to buy Roomba, owner of iRobot, proof that the company is still willing to bring forth gadget makers to the house. Peloton also recently announced that it would be selling equipment and apparel on Amazon's site. Nike and Amazon were both mentioned in various media reports as potential acquirers for Peloton in February, just before McCarthy was hired. Still, Peloton might not be the most compelling takeover target just yet, according to this person's whose name I don't want to butcher, an analyst with Evercore ISI. Turnaround before takeover. Kahura and McCarthy needs more time to cut out costs and get the business back on track so that Peloton can begin to post positive cash flow. Peloton would be more attractive acquisition target after that. So nothing seems imminent in the current environment, she says. Analyst at Goldman Sachs said in a report this week that there is a heightened focus among investors on potential 2023 operations turnaround stories, and specifically cited Peloton as one of them. McCarthy appeared at Goldman's Communicopia Tech and Media Conference in this month, and Goldman, an analyst, said that he continued to emphasize Peloton's strategy for the digital subscription, that there is a lot of investor focus now. Lies. It's best to capitalize on the market opportunity for connected fitness, at-home fitness, and digital health. So it looks like Wall Street seems willing to give McCarthy a little more time to prove that his strategy to revitalize Peloton with the increased focus of subscription revenue can work. Look, like I said, this video is a little bit longer than I really wanted it to be in the first place, but what I'll say is this. One of the things that Peloton had right at the very beginning, and what happens with a lot of these tech companies is they get out over their skis. One of the things that Peloton, what Peloton did really well at the very beginning, and the thing that shocked me the most, was that people were willing to buy a bike. Bikes are pretty expensive. They're not cheap, especially the ones that they had. They were pretty simple. I'm not exactly sure at the very, very beginning whether it was third party. If I'm not mistaken, they were basically buying kind of like white label, so they didn't design their own. As they got successful and started to sell more of them, they developed their own version and started manufacturing. That's where I believe they started to spend more than they should. Whether that was a good deal, meaning the manufacturing deal, whether or not that was, I'm actually digging into that now, so I'm not exactly sure whether they did a poor job of manufacturing themselves, whether the materials were too expensive and they planned poorly, whether they thought that they were going to make it up on the back end, who knows. But I know that when they started to make and build their own equipment is, I think, when the money started to flip a little bit. Peloton makes the majority of their money on monthly subscriptions, not on the equipment. If I'm not mistaken, they might even take a loss on the equipment, which is part of the problem. Fast forward to the treadmill situation. Developing a treadmill. So it's not only that when they developed their own bike, they made a mistake, but then getting out over their skis, trying to get into like the berries in the running market and developing a treadmill was big mistake number 2. And then developing and dumping all that money into the treadmill, and then developing a treadmill that was dangerous, that you had to pull off the shelves. You end up spending all that time, money, energy in a product that that they are not going to be able to, they won't be able to recoup their money on that deal. So the play would have been to, would I have done it the way that they did it exactly? Who knows, right? I think the success came fast and hard. I don't think that they were anticipating or expecting it. But I mean, again, can they turn it around? I mean, what's going to motivate someone to, I mean, their services got to be better, right? So their classes have to be better. If there's no reason for people to log on and people can go inside, and can actually go inside now safely, I would even imagine that they could even drop below pre-pandemic numbers. If I were to give some free advice to Peloton, if I was in that CEO's hot seat, what would I do? I would definitely not be manufacturing any more goddamn rowers or any other equipment. That's for goddamn sure. I mean, now it sounds like the rower is already, available to be purchased. I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have doubled down on more body weight and more safe modalities of fitness. I would focus on the overall client experience. I would find new ways of gamifying and motivating the clientele through the app, because those are the people that are captive. That's your captive audience. And I would try to find more ways to really cater to the people that are diehards, that are keeping the business afloat. So, even if it goes so far as to ask them what types of classes that they like, I would really dig into the analytics, and I would double down on the classes and the trainers that were doing well. And I would try to, cut the fat as far as, the trainers and the classes that weren't doing well, whether it's like, are your boot camps doing well? What time slots are the best? And really doubling down on the things that I'm doing well. And again, cutting all the fat. And that includes the equipment. The hardcore equipment, I would definitely step back from if I could, if it were me. But anyways, this video is a little bit longer than I really wanted to be completely honest. I was trying to get this done in 10 minutes. I've almost doubled that, but it looks like Peloton is hurting right now. And that's good for a person like me, because I have a solution that I'm putting together myself. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, look, do me a huge favor, like, subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and hit the link to this article and this video. I'm going to go ahead and put in the description and in the comments down below. So if you want to check this out on your own, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Believe it or not, this is actually my specialty. Not only did I work with a lot of the trainers from there, I'm also very familiar with a lot of the investors, so on and so forth. Like I said, I was at Barry's for 4 years. I was at Rumble for right around 2.5. Been in the fitness industry for about 14 years now. So this is right up my alley. This is kind of the thing that I do. So anyways, do me a huge favor, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Erykah Badu said it best. I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. Peace.
You look like a threat.